I saw the harsh reality of my people walking on broken, uneven roads and working on dry, cracked fields that seemed to have lost all hope. And in that very moment, I realized that if something didn't change, our nation would keep drowning in poverty and despair. So I decided to transform what was considered waste into wealth, to take the things people threw away and turn them into tools for progress. Because with old discarded tires and ambitious dreams, we could start to build a stronger, greener, and more hopeful Burkina Faso. At first, such an idea sounds unrealistic, almost laughable, because if someone tells you that piles of useless rubber tires lying in junkyards could become the foundation of tough, affordable, eco-friendly roads, your first reaction would probably be disbelief. But here in Burkina Faso, a small landlocked country in West Africa, a visionary leader named Ibrahim Traoré has taken that so-called joke and turned it into reality, and his projects are not just experiments for engineers to study, but life-changing solutions that are actively transforming communities, improving daily life, and capturing the attention of people all over the world. Because his ideas, ranging from roads made of tires to solar-powered cities and artificial canals to support farmers, are rewriting the entire story of a nation once known only for its struggles. To understand why this matters, we need to remember the kind of difficulties Burkina Faso faced for decades. Because this country, cut off from the sea and surrounded by other nations, relied heavily on international loans to keep basic systems running. Yet those loans were a trap, leaving the nation deeper in debt without solving the core problems. And among those problems, the most visible was infrastructure, especially the roads, which were in terrible condition. Many were nothing more than dirt paths that turned into rivers of mud when the rainy season came, making travel dangerous and often impossible. And then, under the scorching heat of the dry season, those same paths cracked, crumbled, and became nearly impassable. So what should have been a short journey between two villages became a nightmare of hours spent stuck in the mud or bouncing over dangerous terrain. And ambulances carrying sick people, fire trucks rushing to emergencies, and buses carrying school children were all trapped for hours, unable to reach their destinations, leaving whole communities cut off, suffering, and forgotten. These bad roads were more than an inconvenience. They were a barrier to survival and growth, because farmers who worked hard to grow crops could not get their harvest to the markets. Children who wanted an education could not reach their schools safely. Families in rural areas felt completely disconnected from the rest of the nation, and emergency services simply could not reach those who needed them most. So instead of moving forward, the country was stuck, blocked by mud, dust, and broken infrastructure, and for a nation trying to rise from poverty, this was not just frustrating. It was devastating, but Ibrahim Traoré, young, bold, and unwilling to accept misery as normal, looked at these challenges and decided that they required a completely different kind of solution. One that was affordable, long-lasting, and friendly to the environment. Something that would not drag the country deeper into debt by forcing it to import expensive materials like asphalt or bitumen, but instead a solution that used what Burkina Faso already had: local resources, local talent, and endless determination. And it was with this mindset that Traoré began to imagine a path forward that the world would soon recognize as both radical and brilliant. When Ibrahim Traoré introduced his bold idea, many people thought it was either impossible or just too crazy to work. But he saw opportunity where everyone else saw only garbage. Because across Burkina Faso and many other countries, old tires were an enormous problem. They were piled high in landfills, burned in open fields where they released toxic smoke, or thrown into rivers and streams where they clogged waterways and spread pollution. And yet Traoré looked at these black mountains of rubber and imagined them as the foundation of a new road system that could change the future of the country. The concept was simple but revolutionary. Workers across the nation would collect discarded tires from villages, towns, and cities. Those tires would be cleaned and carefully laid out in neat, puzzle-like patterns on the ground. Then a specially designed cement mixture would be poured over them, bonding tightly to the rubber and creating a surface that was not only strong and durable, but also flexible, shock-absorbing, and resistant to both the blazing heat of summer and the heavy rains of the wet season, producing roads that lasted longer, cracked less, and cost a fraction of what traditional asphalt roads demanded. And in fact, the savings were remarkable, because instead of spending millions of scarce dollars importing foreign materials, Burkina Faso was using something that was already there and essentially free, reducing road costs by nearly 40% while simultaneously cleaning the environment. And the genius of this solution lay not only in its affordability, but in the unique properties of rubber itself. Since tires are manufactured to endure the weight of vehicles and withstand constant pressure, They are incredibly tough, and when combined with cement, they provide flexibility that asphalt cannot, allowing the roads to handle pressure, shocks, and even earthquakes without breaking apart easily, a quality that made them especially valuable in a country like Burkina Faso, where weather conditions swing from one extreme to another. But the benefits extended beyond engineering, because by turning waste into infrastructure, Traore's project was solving multiple problems at once: recycling dangerous waste that once poisoned the land, cutting costs for a poor nation, and delivering practical results that transformed everyday life. In places where a simple journey between a village and a nearby city once took 5 exhausting hours across bumpy, dangerous paths, people could now travel smoothly in just 1 hour. Farmers who had struggled to bring their crops to market were suddenly able to transport produce quickly and safely. Children who once missed classes because buses could not travel. The muddy roads were now reaching school on time, and ambulances or fire trucks that had once been trapped for hours were finally reaching emergencies without delay, literally saving lives. So these roads were more than physical infrastructure. They were symbols of hope, progress, and possibility. A clear reminder that even something considered worthless can be transformed into something priceless with vision and determination. And as news of this remarkable innovation spread, people within Burkina Faso began to see that their country was no longer a place of only problems, but a place of solutions. While people outside the country started paying attention to how one small, resource-poor nation was rewriting the rules of development with nothing more than creativity, courage, and discarded tires. One of the most powerful outcomes of Traore's Tire Road project was not just the physical roads themselves, but the way it created opportunities for ordinary people. Because from the very beginning, he was determined that this initiative should not depend only on foreign companies or outside contractors. Instead, he wanted it to be built by the hands of Burkinabe workers so that the benefits would flow directly into the communities. And so thousands of young people who had once been unemployed and hopeless suddenly found work collecting, sorting, and cleaning tires, arranging them in formation, mixing cement, and building the new roads that would carry their own families to schools, hospitals, and markets. And this work was not just about earning money. Though the wages were desperately needed, it was about dignity, pride, and a feeling of belonging to something historic. Because for decades, many in Burkina Faso had felt that their country was stuck in poverty with no way forward. But now they were participating in a project making international headlines, and each completed road became proof that their own hands were building the nation's future. In villages where despair had once ruled, people now spoke with excitement about being part of something larger than themselves. And instead of waiting for foreign aid, they were contributing directly to progress, which gave an entirely new sense of empowerment. At the same time, engineers, environmentalists, and leaders from other nations began to take notice, because the project was not just innovative but also practical, affordable, and replicable. And delegations from neighboring countries like Mali, Niger, and Chad visited Burkina Faso to see the tire roads with their own eyes, while European environmental organizations praised them as a pioneering model of eco-friendly infrastructure, calling them eco-roads, that could inspire similar projects in other parts of the world. Even scientists studying sustainable materials were intrigued, because this was a rare example of a developing country producing a world-class solution with limited resources, showing that progress does not always flow from wealthy nations downward, but can just as easily rise from local ingenuity in places often overlooked. And as more reports spread internationally, Burkina Faso's reputation began to change, because where once it was known mainly for its hardships, now it was being recognized as a hub of creativity and resilience, and that global attention brought not only pride to Burkinabe citizens, but also new partnerships, with universities, NGOs, and engineers offering ideas on how to improve and expand the model. And yet, even with this international recognition, Traore kept the focus firmly on his people, insisting that the greatest achievement was not the praise from abroad but the jobs, the pride, and the hope it had restored within Burkina Faso itself, proving that real change begins when ordinary people believe they can shape their own destiny. While the Tire Road project was reshaping transportation and connectivity, Ibrahim Traoré also turned his attention to another life-or-death issue in Burkina Faso: water for agriculture, because for generations farmers had depended almost entirely on rainfall, praying each year for enough showers to grow their crops. But the rains were unreliable, and when they failed, the soil turned to dust, the crops withered, families went hungry, and despair spread across entire villages. And Traoré realized that prayers alone could not sustain the nation's food supply, So he envisioned a massive project of artificial canals, man-made waterways designed to capture rainwater during the wet season, store it and distribute it to farms during the long dry months, ensuring that instead of waiting helplessly for clouds, farmers would finally have a reliable source of irrigation. And this idea was as bold as the tire roads, because it promised not only survival but prosperity, allowing farmers to plant crops year-round with confidence, knowing that their efforts would not be wasted. These canals were more than ditches. They were carefully planned systems built to carry water efficiently to fields where it was most needed. And once operational, they transformed entire regions, because farmers could now grow wheat, rice, corn, vegetables, and fruits continuously, producing more than enough to feed their families and even generating surpluses that could be sold in markets, raising household incomes and giving villages a new economic lifeline. The results spread beyond food security, because as production increased, Burkina Faso moved closer to self-sufficiency, reducing dependence on imported food and expensive aid. And for the first time, there was talk of the nation not only feeding itself, but possibly exporting produce to neighboring countries, bringing in foreign currency and strengthening the economy, something few had imagined possible before. And like the Tire Road project, the canals also created thousands of jobs, because building, digging, maintaining, and managing the waterways required manpower, engineers, and planners, giving local workers opportunities that improved their lives while keeping resources circulating within the country. And once again, people felt that they were not just beneficiaries of aid, but active participants in progress. The psychological impact was enormous, because for too long, farmers had lived at the mercy of unpredictable weather, watching helplessly as entire harvests disappeared overnight due to drought. But now they had tools and systems that gave them control over their future. And that sense of empowerment fueled hope and determination, because agriculture was no longer a desperate gamble but a reliable engine of growth, a sector that could drive the country forward instead of holding it back. In every village where the canals reached, families who once went hungry were now planting multiple crops. Children were eating better, parents were selling their produce, and entire communities were beginning to dream of futures that once felt impossible. And for Traore, this was not just about farming. It was about transforming the very foundation of Burkina Faso's economy, shifting it from dependence on outsiders to strength from within, proving once again that real progress comes not from waiting for handouts, but from unlocking the power of local resources, local labor, and local determination. After tackling the challenges of roads and water, Ibrahim Traoré turned his imagination toward an even more ambitious dream: the creation of a solar-powered city that could completely redefine the future of Burkina Faso. Because in a country where millions still relied on lanterns at night and firewood for cooking, the promise of a modern city running entirely on clean renewable energy sounded revolutionary. And yet Traoré was convinced it was not only possible but necessary. He envisioned a place where every building, homes, schools, hospitals, offices, and factories would be equipped with solar panels generating free electricity from the abundant sun, where solar-powered buses would replace polluting vehicles, reducing fuel costs and cleaning the air, where free Wi-Fi zones would keep young people connected to the digital world, and where modern schools equipped with technology would prepare children for jobs of the future instead of trapping them in the past. And the impact of such a city would go far beyond electricity, because it represented hope, equality, and opportunity for all, bringing light to households that had lived in darkness, powering businesses that could finally grow, supporting hospitals that desperately needed reliable energy to save lives, and creating thousands of jobs for local workers in the production, installation, and maintenance of solar panels, turning renewable energy into both a practical solution and an economic engine. By embracing the sun, Burkina Faso would also save enormous amounts of money once wasted on importing oil and gas, protecting the environment while strengthening independence. And this solar city became a model not only for Africa, but for the entire world, demonstrating that sustainable development is not the privilege of wealthy nations, but an achievable reality even in places with limited resources, so long as there is vision and determination. And at the center of it all stands Ibrahim Traoré, a leader who has proven that true leadership is not about making endless promises, but about delivering tangible results. A man who never accepted suffering as destiny, but instead turned obstacles into opportunities, showing that solutions do not always require foreign aid or massive budgets, but can emerge from local creativity and resilience. And under his leadership, Burkina Faso has transformed from a nation often overlooked into a global symbol of innovation, inspiring not only its own citizens but communities and leaders across continents. Through tire roads that cleaned the land and connected villages, canals that fed farmers and fueled agriculture, and solar cities that promise light, jobs, and sustainability. Traore has demonstrated that progress is not an imported product, but a homegrown achievement. And the story of Burkina Faso is now a story of courage, resourcefulness, and determination, reminding the world that no matter how great the challenges, change is always possible when people dare to dream boldly and work together to make those dreams real.